Hello everyone. I want to share my experience. I own a 1993 Jeep Cherokee Country 4x4, and I bought it 11 years ago when I first returned to the US for $3,500, and I've been driving it ever since. And I really haven't done much to it. I've done the basic things. I put a new set of tires, I changed the front brakes, the back brakes are fine, and I think I put another drive belt on it. I converted the AC system from the old R12 to the 134 system, and obviously batteries, but other than that, that's all I've done to it. And so I'm 51, and rather than, selling it, because it has more than 100,000 miles on it, far more, and going getting a new car or a newer car, I'd probably get a new car, and that would just see me out. And but I decided to go ahead and rebuild it. And when it came to hiring someone, now I've used several different repair shops in the area. I've used the dealership, I've used the proverbial hole in the wall, I've used mid-tier repair shops, and the quality of workmanship is pretty much all the same. Really is. And if anything, I would rate the dealership as the worst because they're clearly the most expensive. And it's kind of sad because they only pay their mechanics about $20 an hour. And in some cases, they have to provide their own tools, which is just ridiculous for a $20 an hour job because tools are not cheap. And that's often the case of these mechanics or technicians, as the modern word is. They have to provide their own tools. And the last shop I used was actually the dealership, and their workmanship was so blatantly bad, they actually refunded me. They refunded me. That's how blatantly bad it was. And that doesn't happen very often. And now it did take complaining on my part, but I did get my refund. And so one thing I don't like about these repair shops is you have no choice but to turn a blind eye. You cannot watch them work on your car. You cannot step into the work area for liability issues. And I understand that, but you're putting all of your trust into someone that you don't know. And that's the part of auto repair that I don't like. Now, I'm capable of doing a lot of my own basic repairs, changing out parts. And now, this repair, rebuilding the engine, I could have done it, but I do have health issues. I had to get my shoulder surgically repaired, so my lifting ability is a bit limited. And so what I want to do, my Jeep has never overheated, but it burns a lot of oil and smokes a little bit. And last year, my emissions um, is due every year in the month of May. And so last year it barely passed the emissions test. So I thought it's probably not going to pass this year. And coupled with the fact that it burns a quart of oil a month. And I was burning coolant, which means that I had a slight head gasket leak. I was having to add coolant in addition to oil about once a month. And so um, I decided to go ahead and remove the heads. Oh, what I did is I noticed there's been a crop of mobile mechanics that have been popping up. And so I went online and, just did an internet search, mobile mechanics near me. And I went online, just read reviews, and I chose one. I chose one. And I purchased all of the parts over a period of about 2, maybe 3 years, just slowly accumulated all the parts that I knew I was going to need. And now these parts, I really didn't pay for them. I put all of my expenses on a credit card, my groceries, gas, anything and everything I possibly can. And I pay my balance at the end of each month. But what I do is accumulate points, and I can cash those points out for actual money. And I can use, that's what I did. You can cash them out for money, or you can just use the points to make purchases online. They're airline points, but they're can be used in different ways. So all of the parts, I really didn't pay much at all of anything, but I think the retail price would have been about $800. So what I did, let's see, I bought a head gasket kit, and let's see, and that came with new valve seals. I bought new push rods and rocker arms, and let's see, and I had to, yeah, obviously had to get more oil. You got to do an oil change, an oil filter change, and exhaust header. I wanted the exhaust header changed out because the original exhaust header was cracked, and I used I think they call that JB Weld, and it actually held up. It's still held up 11 years later. And I got a new thermostat and housing. And let's see, so I bought several bottles of coolant and several jugs of distilled water because I wanted a full coolant system flush. Pardon. I bought transfer case fluid, just 2 quarts, because I wanted that service. And I bought the transfer case gasket kit because my transfer case is leaking. I bought a new transfer case shift linkage, and now all these parts, like I said, I didn't buy them all at once. It's just over the course of a couple of years. And now the last two parts that I bought and was a catalytic converter and a muffler. And I specifically remember what I paid for each of those two parts. Well, both of those parts together was $60. And obviously that's not the, I think the, whatever the retail cost was would have been close to $200. And whatever. But I ended up paying $30 for each part, $60 total. But the mobile mechanic that I hired told me they did not need to be changed. So I ended up returning these two parts. He said the original catalytic converter and muffler were in good shape, no reason to change them. So I hired a mobile mechanic, and the advantage is they come to your place and do the work on your property, and there's full transparency. You can observe them, but in order to hire a mobile mechanic, you must be able to provide a place for them to work. Now, in some cases, they might bring the car maybe to their home. So some can, some can't. And so it just kind of, you just have to call several of them to see if their situation matches your situation. And in my situation, the one that I chose, I think they were brothers. They didn't have a place to work, so it had to be my location, which that was my preference. I wanted to be there. I wanted to observe. I wanted to make sure no corners were cut. Mechanics are notorious for cutting corners and cheapening out because, just every little bit money they can save, it adds up. And so the first thing they did, they removed the heads, And so my Jeep is it's a 4.0 liter straight six. And so they remove the valve cover gasket and remove the heads. And the heads are very, very heavy. Very few people can lift a set of heads on their own. You pretty much need two people to lift those heads. And I took them to a machine shop and I had them resurfaced and cleaned, and I had them change the valve seals. And that was $250. Now, I did go to a shop in the past and ask for a quote for all of the work that I wanted done. And the guy told me it would be, because what I want done, this whole list here, he said it'd be at least 5,000, between five and $7,000 is what he quoted me. And this is a shop near me that specializes in Jeep repair. That's all they repair are Jeeps. And I thought that was very expensive. And just to machine my heads, $2,500, and which is just absolutely ridiculous. So I ended up spending $250 to do what he was going to charge me $2,500 to do. And I just took him to a machinist myself. And well, I had the mobile mechanic drive, which was just a 10-minute drive from where I live. Dropped it off, went back the next day, I picked him up, and I purchased new push rods and rocker arms. So they put the, like I said, new head gasket in. They cleaned the heads. I was able to, they cleaned the mating surfaces and on the block, and they cleaned the pistons really good, really good. And I can imagine a shop skimping out on that. And because once you put the heads on, you can't see the pistons unless you were to put a little camera in there. And so I was able to observe them clean the mating surface, use a razor blade, and you put some spray on it to kind of loosen it up a little bit. And they made all six piston heads look real good. And so I know 100% they are clean because I saw it with my own eyes. And they they put the exhaust, the new exhaust header on, and did everything right. And so I was happy. And like I said, they put the cleaned, resurfaced heads on, and I made sure they torqued it right because there's a torquing pattern, kind of like a circular way. You start in the middle bolt, kind of do circular, work your way out. And I wanted to make sure they did it right. And I had a printout for them in case, I don't know, maybe they knew, maybe they didn't know, but I had the exact torque specs written down. And you, like I said, you follow the pattern. I think you start out at 20, then you go you upgrade to, I think it's 30, then you top out at 45. I'm just going on the top of my head. It's been a while, and you don't just randomly pick a bolt. Same thing with the exhaust header. There's three initial bolts you wanna tighten down, and then you work on the other bolts. And there's a torquing pattern. And so I had a printout, computer printout of that, just in case they didn't know. But he looked at it, he knew. And so and I saw him use his torque wrench. And a lot of people, because they're so experienced, not to be critical, but they're so experienced, they don't need a torque wrench because they can feel it. And but I guess the simple guy in me, or the precise guy in me, wanted to see the torque wrench used. They make the tool, use the damn tool. And so and then I wanted my coolant system fully flushed. And I caught something. Initially, they saw the garden hose and they were going to use that. And I said, no, 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 no. A lot of people on YouTube, you're going to see them. They're going to use a garden hose to flush out a coolant system. It's really not good. It's not extremely terrible, but to extend the life of the radiator, all the, the cooling components, you want to use distilled water. You can buy the 2 gallon jug, I think maybe 2.5 gallon jugs, they're kind of rectangular shaped. Get several of those. They're cheap. I think it was, I'm going to say $2 for one jug, and I bought half a dozen. They're not expensive. But a shop, they would skimp out on that because they want to keep their overhead low. And so, like I said, I bought all the parts, I bought all the supplies. I just needed their time, I needed their labor. And so now the retail value of all of the parts and supplies would have been, I'd say, about $800, maybe $1,000. And but like I said, using my credit card points that I accumulate each year, I typically do my purchases in the month of December, and that's when I cash out my credit card points. And so, but no, I said, no, 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 I have distilled water. And so I had them remove the thermostat housing. I bought the little kit, and because I wanted this is a 33-year-old vehicle, so I wanted a new housing and a new thermostat put in there. And so they did that, and I watched them do it. They did it right. You want to make sure the mating surfaces are clean, and they had the gasket, a little bit of RTV to kind of supplement the gasket, and so same thing with the valve cover gasket. We have the valve cover gasket, but it's good to supplement it with a little bit of RTV, just a light layer with your index finger. And so I watched them do that, and um, and so whenever they flushed it, they did a good job. They did the proper job. Proper job. They, well, obviously, you take off the radiator cap, and then you take off the lower radiator hose to get that drained. I had a big bucket below it and what I did, there's these like rectangular shaped plastic storage tote containers. I think they're maybe like 30 gallons in size, and I put that under my Jeep to where it caught literally every drop. I see people on YouTube that are using buckets, and there's a good, I mean, the buckets catch a good bit, but I say the buckets catch maybe 70 to 80%, and the other 30%, whatever, drops on the pavement. And so the large plastic tote container, they're just cheap. I got it at Walmart. I think it was $6 or $7, and so I was able to catch every single drop. And also another thing I did to help out the mobile mechanic is there's you go behind any store like a Walmart or a grocery store. You want to get a bunch of cardboard boxes, break them down, and lay that under your vehicle and around the vehicle to catch any drops of oil, or when they put old parts on the ground, to keep your driveway or whatever area they're using of yours clean. And so near me, there's a rent-a-center, and they have these huge boxes that these big screen TVs come in. So I was able to get a few of those and bring them, and when I broke it down, it just covered the entire underneath of my Jeep, and I put it around, and the front, and so it kept the pavement clean. And so, but yeah, whenever they did the full coolant system flush, they did it correctly. They started up the vehicle, because you need the vehicle running to warm up so the thermostat can open. And that's how you flush out the block. And so the block, the heater core, and obviously the radiator, it was all flushed out just by pouring. And it was neat because seeing he had the housing block hose disconnected. There's two of them. There's a large one and a small hose going into the housing, and he had the smaller one disconnected, and he just kept pouring that distilled water and it was coming out, and it was just brown, 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 brown. And I think it was the third one, because I bought half a dozen. I think it was the third, maybe the fourth one, it started to get clear. Finally started to get clear. I said, just keep pouring, keep pouring, keep pouring. And so that was pretty neat. And then and so then it finally cleared up, and then we just then from there, with the hose still disconnected from the housing, we just started pouring coolant with the engine running. Now the engine's running, and finally got all that water pushed out. And as soon as we saw coolant coming out, we went ahead and connected the small line into the thermostat housing, and then just started filling it up, and got it burped out, all the air burped out. So I was happy with that they did it correctly. And because in the past I had on another car, I have another little Honda, my little run around town car. I had to get the radiator replaced, and they didn't burp it right. And the proper way to burp it is, you want to have the front end of the vehicle elevated. If you can put it on, or just jack it up, because air goes up. So you just want to have it a little bit elevated. And on my little Honda, they didn't properly burp it. And so I just did that on my own. And and that's the thing. I wasn't there to watch it, because I had dropped my Honda off at a repair shop, turned my back, I left, came back the next day. So this is the advantage of the mobile mechanic. This is the future, because there's no trust in society. There's just really none. And so yeah, I was very happy. So they properly cleaned out the coolant system. Then next they had to go below the vehicle, and they had to disassemble the transfer case, or to drain it out first and then disassemble it, clean the mating surfaces, and they put in the new gaskets and all the new seals, the tire transfer case. And now there is one section, the transfer case housing, and that does not have a gasket. It's completely dependent on an RTV gasket maker, and we did make a mistake, and I didn't call it out. I was so excited, but it does leak again now. So I told them, but I'll probably just fix it myself. They did the meat and potatoes of the job, but whenever you use whenever you're using RTV gasket maker as your primary gasket, meaning like you don't have an actual material gasket, you're using only the RTV, that stuff has to set for 24 to 48 hours prior to adding the fluid. And in my case, they did the RTV thing, they put it together, screwed it, and we immediately put in the transfer case fluid. And, then I also had them change out the transfer case shift linkage. And because these old ones, they get a little stiff when you try to put it into four-wheel drive. So that's a real simple thing. And but I was so excited, and I went out and I drove it right away. I went straight to the emissions shop, and had the emissions test done. Obviously, it passed with flying colors. And another thing I caught that they were going to do, they caught when I bought new push rods and rocker arms, and they were putting them in without lubricating them. And I went, hey, stop. I have lubricant. And because by not lubricating them, it creates a dry start. The initial start is a dry start. And so it's just a little tube. It's a AMSOIL engine part lubricant. And so I said, hey, take all those push rods out. And I said, here, use this on them. So just like a little squeeze, but like almost like a little tube of toothpaste, and they got them all on there. I said, here, put some on the rocker, or I put some on the rocker arms. So I caught that, and and so that's an example right there. They would have, you know, it that's overhead, and I mean it adds up. I mean that little tube, I don't know what that would even cost. I can't see it costing more than $10 for a tube of that you know engine parts lubricant, and but they yeah I caught that, and so and then but yeah I used high level zinc. They call it break-in oil, and so we had that put in there, and so but yeah it passed the emissions right away, and then because I drove it right away, it was a kind of a hot day. The RTV didn't have time to settle. It's only this that one section of the transfer case where there's no actual gasket, only RTV can be used. So I guess I called them. They said they would come back and fix it. And I told it how it has to set for at least a day, preferably 2 days before even putting the fluid in. And they said, yeah, yeah, and so, they have to come back in 1,000 miles, and then we're going to change the oil again and filter, and then put in regular oil, and then they have to retorque everything after driving 1,000 miles. And so, but my experience with the mobile mechanics, that is the future. And for all that work, I paid them $1,200 cash. And so, all in all, I'll just say that the parts retail. Now, like I said, I didn't pay retail. I used credit card points to get these parts, but the retail for all the parts, I'm going to say $1,000, and I paid these two guys $1,200, so $2,200, and that engine that engine will see me out. It'll see me out. I'm 51, so the thing is 33 years old. The body is solid as can be. Now there are things I'm going to have to put eventually in the future, probably new leaf springs, maybe new shocks, things like that. I'll have to change in the future, maybe. And but I don't off road. I just commute here in the city. I like having that four-wheel drive in case we get a lot of snow. I do like to go up into the mountains and hiking, and so especially in the winter to go up in the mountains, it's required that one have either snow tires or a four-wheel drive. So I like having that vehicle so I have access to the mountains in the winter. And but yeah, these shops, their overhead is just so much. They have to charge a lot. I mean, between um, renting a space and paying general liability insurance, workers' compensation insurance, and it's just their overhead is a lot, and that's why they have to pass that cost down to the customer. But there is no reason to cut corners. There is no reason. So you have to observe them like I did, and that's just the way to go. That's the future, the mobile mechanic. And so that's my experience, and overall it was a positive experience, and they weren't perfect, and but there is no perfect repair shop, and but most important, I was able to observe and keep them from cutting corners. Again, they were going to use um, garden hose water, tap water, and I said no. They almost like I said, when they put in the rocker arms, push rods, they weren't going to lubricate it. I caught that. and and all the fluids that I bought high quality fluids, high quality. And like the coolant I bought, Prestone, that's a quality brand. It's rated for 10 years, 350,000 miles. and so I'm good to go. And the oil that I bought was high quality. And see, there's a special type of oil you have to use. It's called, they call it break-in oil, but it's an oil with a high level of zinc. And you just need it for 1,000 miles. Then you can go to your regular. Um, I like the Shell T5 oil for my old Jeep Cherokee, and but um, so yeah, that's the future. The mobile mechanic. They don't have the overhead. These two guys, I call them brothers. I don't know, but they showed up in an SUV, and they had the back end of the SUV was gutted out, kind of, and it had all the tools they needed, and it was a pretty nice setup they had in their SUV. And so, yeah, the mobile mechanic, the auto shops, I think are dead because you can't trust people. You can't turn your back on them. Well, that's just, I wanted to share this, and um, these new cars are just getting outrageously priced. And I think it's very smart and wise if you can save money and just fix these old cars. And so I have two vehicles personally. I have a 20-year-old Honda, my little four-cylinder run around town car, and I have a 33-year-old Jeep Cherokee. That's kind of like my, I run around town in it, but like I said, it just gives me access to, recreational activities such as going into mountains and going fishing. So anyways, hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you.